Good evening and welcome to the August 6, 2018 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite Italy Taylor to come up to the podium and lead us in the pledge. If everyone could please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is reflection, and I would like to ask for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have approval of minutes tonight. There are two sets of minutes before us. The first being the work session minutes from July 9th. What's the pleasure of the council?
Move approval of the minutes from July 9th.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 4-0. Next, we have the minutes from the work session on July 23rd. What's the pleasure of the council?
We have two abstentions.
Oh, okay. You know what? Maybe we should defer that.
That's all it was.
I guess. Because Neil's not here and we have two abstentions.
We can just defer it to later.
Let's just defer that one. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out, Doris. Okay. Well, then next I would like to call a few people to, I'm going to join a few people at the podium. Scott Rabine, who's the president of the Gaithersburg Rotary Club, Sarah Torrance, acting president of the Gaithersburg Rotary Foundation, John Hanson, Bethesda Chevy Chase Rotary Club, and Kiana Taylor, who was an awardee this evening. We are going to, we're hosting the Rotary Club in their awarding of the first annual Linda Hanson Scholarship, and I'm going to let them take it away and just stand up there with them.
Mr. Mayor, council members, and friends of Gaithersburg, Linda Melvin Hanson believed in serving the community. Linda felt comfortable working with people from all backgrounds and languages, in part because she attended schools in the United States and in Latin and South America, as her State Department father served in various capitals. Linda graduated from the University of Maryland in 1974 with a degree in music and began teaching piano professionally and playing the organ in church services. We married in 1979, and while raising our two children, Heather and Jeremy, Linda provided piano lessons to the kids in our Gaithersburg neighborhood near Quince Orchard High School while serving on the PTA, which included time as the president of the PTA at Thurgood Marshall Elementary School and the PTA at Ridgeview Middle School, and serving on the PTA at Quince Orchard High School. Linda was frequently called upon to translate English to Spanish and Spanish to English. Linda was even trained and briefly served as a scout leader for our daughter's Sea Explorer ship. Our church enjoyed Linda's years of service as the manager of the Christian Science Reading Room here in Old Town Gaithersburg, which is how Linda became active in Gaithersburg's Old Town business community and the Old Town Advisory Commission under Mayor Ed Bohr and Mayor Sidney Katz. Linda's activities at Quince Orchard High School included helping organize the marching band camp each summer and working with the music department to coordinate the parents' support of the marching band and the concert band during the school year as they practiced and competed. After our children graduated from Quince Orchard, Linda became active in Gaithersburg Help, known for its Neighbor Helping Neighbor food pantry. Linda loved working with the other volunteers as the pantry expanded and grew into its new, larger location. She also helped coordinate Gaithersburg Help's efforts with other organizations in this part of the county to serve those in need. When Linda and I traveled as volunteers to Quito, Ecuador, with a Rotary International team to initiate a literacy teaching program for rural teachers, Linda became interested in joining a Rotary Club.
The Rotary Club of Gaithersburg, that I serve as a president. Linda served as a prior president there. I have not been a member of the Gaithersburg Rotary Club for very long, but Linda touched me and my family quite a bit through all of what she did in Gaithersburg, and quickly encouraged me to get involved. I was with the federal government for a long time and never got part of a community, and she was warm and welcoming to bring me into the community, especially through Gaithersburg Help, but also with the Rotary Club and all that Rotary Club stands for. After what you heard John say, we lost Linda way too soon. She was a wonderful part of I know, your family and your wife, but of this community, and she touched many people. That's why when she did pass, we decided to start the Linda Hanson Memorial Scholarship, an annual scholarship given out to a student of Gaithersburg High School that was not only a good student, but really embodied what Linda Hanson was, and that was giving of herself to the community and back to those that are less fortunate than many of us. And I was fortunate enough to be on the panel that interviewed 4 outstanding students at Quince Orchard High School that had just stellar performance. And Kiana Taylor is the one that really came to the top of the surface. Not only does she do a significant amount in the community for Gaithersburg and beyond through her church, she played varsity volleyball, but she did so many different things, but still had the time to give of herself, not just for the 75 hours that you need for graduation, but for hundreds of hours and hundreds of hours, giving back to other students, middle school students, young kids that attended her church camp, and really impressed the 3 of us that interviewed all 4 candidates. So if I could invite up Ms. Sarah Torrance, who is our acting president of our Rotary Club Foundation, to present her with the first annual Linda Hanson Memorial Scholarship.
Kiana, it's my great pleasure to present to you the first installment of $2,000 scholarship. This is a $1,000 check. You can hold it in your hand. And upon completion of your first year, you will get your second installment.
Thank you.
So we're very proud of Kiana, and we know that she will represent Quince Orchard High School well as she attends Hampton University.
Right.
So congratulations.
Let's get a picture all.
You
With the same
You guys should.
Gaithersburg High School.
Yeah, just like that. Just like that.
Just like that with all those smiles. $1,000 smiles. Good.
On behalf of the council, I want to thank the Rotary Club and congratulate Kiana. It's an honor to have this first ceremony in these chambers in front of everybody. So thank you all for thinking of it. We were delighted to accommodate. Next on our agenda, we have a staff briefing for the MedImmune Pedestrian Bridge concept design. And let me see. Oh, our Public Works Director, Michael Johnson, is going to be leading us.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. The mayor and council had expressed a desire for protected pedestrian crossing at the intersection of Great Seneca Highway and Kentlands Boulevard. And this was to address concerns with pedestrian access and safety while crossing that intersection. In looking at the accident record, there were several over the, I guess from 2011 through current, there were about 3 incidents in which pedestrians crossing legally in the walk were struck by turning movements off Kentlands Boulevard. So there appears to be a justification for providing a safer route across the highway. In an effort to achieve this goal, the city worked out an arrangement with MedImmune Inc. LLC to provide funding of up to $4 million to support the design and construction of a pedestrian bridge at this location. With me tonight is Kos Baboyi. Did I get that correct? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Practice that. And Gizachu Tirone, we call him GK. Kos is with AMT, A. Morton Thomas Engineers, and he's an associate with them, and the prime project manager working on the job for us. And GK is our project manager in the development of this job. So we entered into a contract with AMT to provide engineering services for the development of the concept design of the bridge. They went through several analyses of site constraints, alternative design concepts, and settled on a preferred concept which they feel addresses the city's concerns. So tonight we will be going through the presentation, and it will be a fairly brief presentation, no more than about 15 minutes or so tops, and then we'll open ourselves to any questions that you might have to further elaborate on what is presented to you.
Sure.
So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kos.
Thank you, Ali. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the City Council members. Here is an outline of our presentation tonight, briefly, and let's start with the introduction first. What you see in here is an aerial view of the project site.
Sorry, I'll just make it full screen.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. You can see in here the Great Seneca Highway, and on the right side, you can see the MedImmune complex. On the left is the Kentlands Town Center commercial development, and you also see over there we have labeled in red the existing at-grade pedestrian crossing. Couple of views of this crossing, one from Kentlands Boulevard side on the top, and on the opposite side of the crossing, which is the Orchard Ridge Drive side, you can also see how actually this existing crossing looks. We did a limited study that clearly justified that a construction of a pedestrian bridge, instead of using this at-grade intersection, we noted in this study results that there were a 3 times increase in pedestrian and bicycle traffic at this intersection only in the last 5 years. Also, the large developments are expected in the area. That's going to definitely affect the traffic, bicycle traffic and pedestrian traffic. And also, we ourselves personally, we witnessed that people really don't care about the traffic signal. They just cross anyway. And this has resulted in several accidents in the cross section, which has been reported. What you see in here is the general concept of the intersection that was presented to us right in the beginning of the project from the city itself. As you can see in here, we have a bridge labeled in red. We try to make that as normal as possible to the highway so that we can reduce the length of the bridge. You can see a ramp on the left side along the Kentlands Boulevard side. In other words, we need a ramp to climb and get to the bridge. And you can see on the right side the meandering ramp, which is taking advantage of that hill, which is natural hill, or which is in front of the MedImmune campus. So we can decrease the cut and fill and environmental impacts by this, the presence of the existing hill. Now, for any pedestrian bridge, there are certain specifications in Maryland and any other state. You gotta have certain vertical clearance, which is 17 foot 9 inches in Maryland. So that's where you should build the bridge. And also there's horizontal clearance for the supports of the bridge. So you gotta stay away from the freeway certain distance, which is about 30 feet, or you gotta build a barrier. Now, when you look at those things, so you can pretty much figure out the location of this pedestrian bridge as far as Great Seneca Highway is concerned. But there's one more thing. There's gonna be a future location for the future CCT, which is, we did our homework, and that is running parallel to Great Seneca Highway. If you stand on Great Seneca Highway, you're looking south, that's going to be on your right side. So we have to satisfy those vertical and horizontal clearances for this future establishment as well. So when we do that, we did our homework and everything, we came up with this, what you see here, actually, this aerial view. In this aerial view, you can clearly see the future CCT. We figured that we have to stay away 50 feet from the curb line of this Great Seneca Highway, build our first bridge support on the Kentland side. On the other side, you can stay 30 feet away from the curb line easily. And as a matter of fact, that's the ideal location for the other bridge support. Now, we looked at 4 alternates in conjunction with the city and evaluated those. The first alternate was a single span bridge, which is about 250 foot long, crossing the Great Seneca Highway. Now, for this alternate, we stayed with a rather milder slope for the ramp, which is 5%. That requires switching back the ramps on both sides. Second alternate was exactly the same as the first alternate. The only difference was, instead of a single span bridge, we decided to make it double span to build a pier in the median of the Great Seneca Highway. The third alternate, we said, well, let's just not put any ramps. Let's just have the bridge with 2 elevators on each side, so people can use the elevators, go up and down. They don't have to climb the ramps. The fourth alternate was pretty much like the first one. The only difference was, we said, let's just make these ramps sharper. Let's bring it to the ADA requirements, the maximum, which is 1/12 or 8.33%. That by itself got rid of those switchbacks, and then made these ramps shorter, but of course a little bit steeper. On the other side, we could take advantage of the hill with this little bit higher ramp, and naturally just bring the ramp and suit it to the hill, the curvature of the hill itself, and bring it down. So what you see in here, actually, these are the plan view of the alternate 1 and alternate 2, which is similar to alternate 1 versus alternate 4. And you can see the switchbacks for alternate 1 and alternate 2, but you can see only one single straight ramp on one side for alternate 4 and meandering ramp on the other side. If you want to compare the elevation view of these 2 alternates as far as the ramps are concerned, if you look at these alternate 2 and 1 and 2 versus alternate 4, standing on the Kentlands Boulevard side and looking at it, you can easily see the massive structure that you need to build for the switching back these ramps for alternate 1 and 2 versus a more simple structure and less environmentally detrimental structure, which is alternate 4. So in order to select the optimum alternate, we took that decision matrix approach. As you can see here in this decision matrix, we have on the column, we have 4 alternates in here, alternate 1 through alternate 4. And then we have evaluation factors on the row above over there. The evaluation factors that we use in decision matrix are simply, first, the user convenience and likelihood of the use, and then construction cost, maintenance cost, impact to traffic during the construction, land acquisition, utility impact, and environmental impact, and ultimately change in the surrounding scenery. We even looked at that. And then we ranked each of these alternate against each of those factors on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the most favorable one, the 5 being the least favorable one. And then after that, we determined the combined ranking. For the combined ranking, we came up with the weighting factors for each evaluation factor. And all this stuff was done in conjunction with the city. And eventually, as you can see in this decision matrix, alternate 4 is the winner, which ranks 2, and alternate 2 is the least favorable, the ranking of 3+. Here is a little bit more information on the alternate 4 or selected alternate. As you can see in here, we got a ramp moving up, and we have 2 landing areas on each side of the bridge, and the city especially requested to have some staircases also, so that people actually can climb to those landing areas. Some people, they don't want to use the ramps, they just want to use the stairs and to go up. Here is the general elevation of the bridge we have in mind in conjunction with the city. They wanted a bowstring type truss bridge. As you can see, the cross section of the bridge, it gives you 14 feet clear width for which we call a shared use path. Both bicycles and pedestrians together can use. It's a Maryland standard. And then we have also protection fence, so nothing will be thrown from the bridge to the roadway underneath, so that can harm the cars and all that stuff underneath. Here is the a view of the ramp from the Kentlands Boulevard side. As you can see, it starts with a short distance, a relatively short distance, with a modular block wall, aesthetically very pleasing. After that, turns into a slab bridge, column and slab only, which is an open type structure and the minimum interference with the traffic. On the top, you can see actually the cross section of one of these ramp bridges. Again, 14 feet clearance. We even thought about having handrails to satisfy the ADA purposes, because requirements, because of the slope of the ramp. Everything all based on the standards. As far as utility impacts are concerned, there's no utility impact for this alternate. We cleared all the utilities, decided to put the supports away from utilities. Land acquisition, we're going to need about 10,000 square feet in order to build the ramp and also have enough room for future maintenance and easements for the access for future maintenance. We looked at all the permits that we need to build this bridge, design and build this bridge. Most of the permits are from the city of Gaithersburg, as you can see here. Then we looked at some of the featured bridges. The picture that you see in here is actually the bridge, pedestrian bridge, over Dallas Toll Road and Access Road. It's a wolf trap pedestrian bridge, as a matter of fact. There were lots of good features over there, and it's also a bowstring truss. Here's a showcase of that bridge. As a matter of fact, it was built only several years ago. It's a beautiful bridge, and they use certain type of materials over there, which is very lightweight. It's not concrete. Therefore, makes the truss itself not to be too hefty. It's fiber reinforced polymer deck and curbs, lightweight material, and it has a mesh fences on both sides, and the method of the erection and everything you can see in here. We did a rendering of this bridge, as a matter of fact. This is the idea we have in our mind. As you can see on the left side, you can see our ramps approaching the bridge. You can see our staircase over there on the Kentland side. On the right side, you can see, as a matter of fact, then again, the stairs and the meandering ramp also is shown over here in this rendering. The substructure, the supports of the bridge lend themselves well with lots of architectural treatment, form liner. These days you see on all of the Maryland bridges, as a matter of fact, on the highways. And then we did a construction and design estimate altogether, as Ollie just mentioned. We're talking about $4 million for design, construction inspection, and so on. Thank you very much, and that will conclude my presentation.
Thank you.
So at this point, we would sort of ask if you had any questions on what you saw and general impressions.
No, I first want to say thanks for all the work that you guys have put into this, and the approach seems pretty thorough, and it's exciting. Actually, now that we sort of know how we want to engineer this thing, aesthetics are important, and I think you guys have put some good thought into it. You know, what you described as, I guess, the support areas that are being architecturally designed as a matter of course now with all the state bridges, and you know, I definitely want to see some sort of nice appearance here, and it's got to hold up too. I mean, everyone saw the tragedy last year in Florida with that bridge, with that pedestrian bridge. We can't, you know, no one wants that. But appreciate the job you guys have done. I don't really have any questions about who wants to go? Lorianne.
Yes. So I just want to second what our mayor mentioned. A very good presentation, very thorough. Really appreciate the street shots as well. I see the meandering bridge. How likely is it for someone in a wheelchair to get up that bridge without an escalator? I mean, without an elevator near the stairs? Is it fairly easy? Is this meandering used elsewhere?
The slope that actually we have in mind is less than, especially on the meandering side, does not even reach the maximum ADA required. Maximum ADA is 1/12 slope, which we maintained it on the Kentland side, on the straight side. On the meandering side, our maximum is a 6% or something like that, 6.5, I believe. But it's not even that maximum that we are using on Kentland side. So we should be okay as far as the ADA requirements are concerned.
By the way, when we develop this concept design, there was an involvement from the city planning, the ADA staff, and the major constraint on this concept design was ADA, because we have to make our facility accessible for everyone. For everyone. And that's the major end. It's the FHW ADA requirement, which allows 8.63%. It is considered as an accessible bridge. But as he said, in most areas we have 5 and 6%, but 8.3% is considered as accessible. It's a federal requirement.
Councilman, basically the ramp, while it would be accessible for a person in a wheelchair, another concern that we did look at was the ability for cyclists to pick up speed coming down the ramps. So the meander, the sort of general meander, the geometry of the ramp, kind of like it has a calming effect to people being able to pick up the kind of speed that people would, that kind of length might sort of indicate. So we feel that ramp is sort of like not only accessible but also safe for use by pedestrians and cyclists who wish to use the bridge.
And I was gonna mention the Florida Bridge as well and ask about the materials, because what you just showed, I think the, is it the Potomac?
Here, it's
Yeah, this or the
Wolf
Or was that in
Trap.
Virginia?
Yeah,
The Virginia
Pedestrian
Bridge. I just saw lightweight material. I don't
Right.
know if it's pre-manufactured or if it's too early to even talk about the materials or.
It is a precast, and I'll let Cos go into a bit more detail. It is a precast, and we did discuss, we are aware that with the recent tragedy at Florida AMU, one, there are significant differences between the type of structure that we're proposing here and the method with which we would erect it.
Oh, okay.
The Florida site chose to erect the bridge while allowing traffic to go under it. I've never heard of that in my years of working with structures. It's not really a best practice. What we would do during the erection would be to close. There would be a temporary close, probably sometime at night. It would be coordinated with the state because it is a state road.
Okay.
But there would be like an outage where the road is closed and the detour would be provided during the launching of the bridge. So there is no chance of that. And then secondly, the structure in Florida was a post-tension structure. That's a structure that is sort of strengthened after it's erected. And while the forensic analysis is still being done, it appears as if some significant blunders were made on the part of the engineering staff.
Okay.
Whereas the bridge was signaling distress and they ignored it. And we had what occurred. This is a prefabricated structure that would be built off site, brought to the site and launched safely. So there's no chance of that occurring here. And then, Klaus, if you want to say
It's a
more.
proven technology, has been around for truss bridges, I would say, probably about in this country about 100 years.
Okay.
And the Florida Bridge was a one-of-a-kind type that the engineer followed the architect's dreams, tried to create something that no one has seen before.
Yeah.
And in the process, there were lots of blunders. And some of the common sense things was not even followed. For example, when you're launching something, the first thing you do not let traffic at that time. You detour it. It's number one thing. It's a common sense thing. It has nothing to do with engineering. But this is a proven technology. The lightweight material of this part that you mentioned, that is not really the main structure or main component of this thing.
Okay.
It's just the deck itself, basically. It's not the truss part of it. Truss part is just the same old-fashioned truss that you can see in this country, built from the Depression time all the time, from that time on, in many, many places. It's just they're making it prefabricated these days, just bring them and launch them all at the same time.
Okay.
How long would you anticipate the closure?
Yeah, that's my last.
Probably be like about 8 hours. 8 hour
The Dulles was
window.
done overnight.
Right, overnight. It would be done overnight. I mean, we'd have a better idea once we've worked out the actual details of the structure, but somewhere between 8 to 10 hour closure should allow them to launch.
The good thing is, one of the options was, two-span bridge. It means, pier in the middle. That pier construction requires, a lot of time. We have to close the road. But this is just single span. We can do the approach part without closing or with minimal restriction of the road. So we'll be closing the road basically just to put the superstructure in. It will be just 1 day operation.
Oh, okay.
Neil.
So just a couple of quick questions. First of all, also thank you for your good work. We've been waiting to see this for a long time. This intersection is a bit of a challenge. A couple of quick questions. On this decision matrix, I noticed that between alternative 3 and 4, the alternative 3 with an elevator and no ramps is the highest cost life cycle maintenance cost,
Yes.
which is I would expect because you have to maintain an elevator. I was surprised that alternative 4 was also on the high side in terms of life cycle maintenance cost. What is it about that design that makes it expensive to maintain?
It was the elevator part.
No, the one without alternative 4
Oh.
was shown just as high as poorly rated on life cycle maintenance cost, which
Yeah,
is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, here is the case. The alternative, the elevator option from alternative 4 is removed finally. It's not only about the numbers and the rating, but we are discussing, which alternative really, would be preferred by the city. And we have discussion with the city management. And we wrote the elevator option finally. And probably some of the numbers remained there.
Okay.
Yeah, there was an elevator with alternative for
We modified this matrix after, but this is left from that side, as GK mentioned.
Yeah.
At that time, we had elevators also with alternate four. Exactly. Then later, that's why you see the same life cycle cost for alternate four and the one with elevator.
That was just to make sure I was paying attention.
Yeah,
To
I really appreciate it because we kept this at final moments, and we thought
took it out.
That's fine because after all, this really the numbers really doesn't that much matter for us because there are so many considerations and there are so many inputs from the city senior staff in management because it's really major structure, but
Okay, that's fine.
There is some error there.
No, that's clear now.
Sorry for that. Yeah.
A couple of other quick ones. On the Kentlands Boulevard side, the ground has a slope as well. Aside from the slope that you're putting in, there's a downhill slope.
Yes.
Do you know what the grade of that slope is? How comparable that is?
The grade of that slope, I would say, would be something like 3% or something.
Okay, so
like
it's
that.
a fairly mild grade at this
Yes,
point.
going down.
I was just curious how much to try to understand the comparison.
No, we developed, as a matter of fact, what we did the first thing, we did a comprehensive survey and developed the base map and elevations and everything. And we have that. It's not part of this thing, but it is part of the study we did for the city. So in that thing, you can actually see the slope of that, as well as all the elevations and everything that we are giving to the bridge, as well as the ground elevations everywhere in that area.
Okay,
Well,
no, I understand. I just was curious as a comparison point. One last question is
Sure.
the crosswalk that currently goes across Kentland, that goes across Great Seneca Highway, will that remain when the bridge is in place?
We would suggest to remain. The reason that if we thought about this thing, we believe that if you take it out, some people may attempt to cross anyways. It becomes a very dangerous situation. We don't see any harm by just having a redundancy over there. Just let it to be over there. I mean, that's not going to hurt anything.
I think this is a really controversial issue. I was trying to refer what's the practice regarding this. Some say in order all pedestrian to direct to the bridge, it's better if you remove the existing at grade crossing. But some say, okay, even if some people, they may not like to go that ramp, still if you remove the pedestrian, still they may attempt to cross illegally, which should be, more accident prone. So it's a really controversial issue, and I think on this just concept level design, and on the detailed design level, we can seek, additional inputs on this, and we have the choice, to take whichever the city thinks the best option.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a few questions as well. First, in looking at the rendering and some of the aerials, I'm trying to imagine the way in which pedestrians coming from different directions would approach and get on the ramp or the bridge. So looking at the Orchard Ridge Drive side of Great Seneca Highway, if someone was walking from the north down toward the bridge, I guess it looks to me that they would walk underneath the bridge and then be able to access the meandering ramp through the staircase there, or would there be other access from the other side?
There is another access. The main access, as a matter of fact, if we go one slide back, let's see, let's look in here. Here.
Yeah.
Right in here.
Yeah.
This shows exactly where the main access to meandering ramp is. What you see actually in the rendering is the staircases.
Yeah, I understand. I'm imagining someone coming from the top of that photograph,
Right.
walking down the sidewalk of Great Seneca Highway, and I guess they would walk underneath the bridge, right?
Right,
And
yes.
then access the ramp through the staircase there
yes.
on Great Seneca Highway.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm wondering, because you talked a lot about the natural grade
Yes.
where the ramp is weaving. Again, this is a minor detail that would be dealt with at later phase, but because of the grade of the ground, is it theoretically possible to add entry points to the ramp at a higher point in the ramp, for example, for the employees at MedImmune who are trying to access that crossing, for example?
Well,
From the
that would
parking
be
lot,
possible,
basically.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, absolutely.
I would think it'd
Okay,
be
and then
important more
on
than
the other side, I guess, is sort of the same question. Obviously, the ramp on the other side is geared toward folks coming in and out of Kentlands Boulevard, sort of a little further up.
Yes.
But if someone were walking down the sidewalk of Great Seneca Highway from the north, they would again walk underneath the bridge, and then
bridge.
there would be, not so far from there would be some staircases right there as
Give a
well.
staircase to climb up in
Okay.
that case.
Okay, got it. And then there was a comment made about attempting to sort of naturally slow down the speed of bicyclists on the what I'll call the east side of the aerial. But obviously, on the west side of the aerial, we don't have that. We have a straight shot, which has benefits, but does it also have the disadvantage of possibly encouraging bicyclists to go a little too fast down that
Yes.
ramp? And how do we address that?
Okay, there are two things in here that would slow them down. One of them is the ADA requirements that say every 30 inches that you descend or ascend, you have to create a 5-foot wide a level section. In other words, that is taken care of, in all these things that we have done. There's further detail of these things. So you got some flat areas, even areas that all along this, for example, along the ramp, along the Kentland Boulevard, as you can see in here, we are showing them in red, as a matter of fact. If you look at,
Yeah,
you
I see them.
those,
Yeah.
yeah, those red, no, I'm sorry, not the red areas, the black areas.
Uh-huh.
The black areas, those are actually those flat 5-foot wide sections. That's one of the things that slows them down. The other thing is that, when we are talking about a city, there is a technology right now they're used on regular bridges for skid resistance. It's called the ultra-thin epoxy overlay. It's a very simple system. You squeegee epoxy on the deck, and you spread sand, and then you brush off the excess sand, and cures in a matter of hours, and creates an excellent skid resistance. That would be an idea. It's a relatively very inexpensive thing, very simple thing that can create so much skid resistance over there that if the bicycle wants to stop immediately or something like that, they can easily achieve that. So.
And then a couple other questions. Your slide talking about aesthetically enhanced options. Again, obviously, we can debate minor aesthetic improvements as we get into the more detailed phases of this, but the rendering that you provide strikes me as sort of already encompassing a good amount of the main aesthetic aspect of the design. Do you see a lot of opportunity here for additional aesthetic improvements around the bases or around the sides of the bridge, given the design that you've recommended?
Absolutely, there is lots of room for improvement as far as this rendering is concerned. For example, the supports of the bridges, as we said, they lend themselves to form liner concrete. That's it can make it really very beautiful and aesthetically pleasing structures. As far as the bridge, the truss bridge itself is concerned, the fencing itself that we have lends itself also to lots of aesthetics. It doesn't have to be a simple fencing. The other thing we could do in here is lighting, as a matter of fact. Lighting can add a lot to the look of the bridge, especially during the nighttime. For pedestrian lighting, we were thinking about having foot lighting, so that there will not be too much of brightness in the air and all that stuff. and which is done these days in many pedestrian bridges in residential areas, especially because people don't like lights. But it's a very good way of taking care of that. And this is what comes to mind, but obviously there are many different ways of enhancing the look of the bridge, very inexpensively, as a matter of fact. The little things here and there.
Great. And then this is a question, sort of a combination of question for you all and for our staff. So if we can remind the public, we had a contribution, I think, from MedImmune toward financial contribution toward the construction of this bridge. What was the amount of that contribution?
$4 million.
$4 million. Okay. So and then the estimate for design and construction and all the added processes, your estimate about $4 million, right? Okay.
You didn't know that. We just came up.
Oh, really? Just good coincidence. Okay, great.
That's nice how that came
That's
out.
good how that worked out. And then final question. Again, we don't know exactly when this project might start full design and construction process, but when it does, is there an estimate as sort of amount of time it might take to build this project?
Well, we are estimating, as far as design is concerned, including getting the permits and everything, approximately ballpark about a year, and the same amount for construction.
So we are saying maximum 2.5 years.
Maximum 2.5 years.
Yeah, you can't take up to 3 to be safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, those are the questions I had. Thank you very much.
Mike.
Well, so most of the questions that I had have been asked. Most of them, yeah. Well, I think, and really it's about the aesthetics. I think we all have an expectation for construction in the city and things that the city owns for the architecture to be distinctive. And as long as it seems like there's opportunities for that here. Absolutely. I think the fact that we have a single span bridge is actually pretty distinctive in itself, and architecturally distinct. The concerns, one concern is how when the CCT does come through, how will that relate to that first pillar on Great Center, Kentlands Boulevard? What will be the distance there? And so,
right. Let's just go back to. Yeah, no, let's focus on this one. Yeah. This is the plan view. We figured this thing out. If we stay the first support or first pier on the Kentland side, the face of the pier, if we stay 50 feet from the curb line of the Gray Seneca Highway, we got enough room over there to clear the future CCT in conjunction with a guardrail.
Okay.
Here is, as GK was saying, here is actually, you can see in here the cross section of it. On the cross section in here, you can see the Great Seneca Highway. You're looking south in here. On the arrow that you see, the red arrow, is actually the Great Seneca Highway. Looking south, you can see the curve of the Great Seneca Highway. You stay 50 feet away from that, you have cleared the future CCT. These are the plans that we got, cross-section of the future CCT, as a matter of fact. In conjunction, what you're seeing here in black is a guardrail, a proposed guardrail, and then next to that is the proposed pier of the bridge.
Okay.
50 feet will take care of us.
So there's no concern about potential disruption or...
No, that would clear that, and that gives us 200 foot long.
But I mean, in terms of during the construction, there's not going to be any change in the stability or potential impact to the stability of that pier while the roadway is being constructed?
No, we could, these piers, we got some geotechnical information from MedImmune for the construction of MedImmune itself. The foundations of these piers with drill shafts.
Okay.
In other words, these are deep, about 40 foot long drill shafts painted on bedrock underneath. Oh. So anything up there will be for the roadway superficial, basically, as far as the foundation of the piers of the foundation of the piers are concerned.
And if the structure is in place, Councilman, the state would be required to protect the structure, and there are ways in which they can protect it during construction to avoid damage. But given that it's that deep and bedded on rock, there's probably little chance of
not to be affected by any other construction. Okay, so the last one is more like regular maintenance and the impact of the bridge and the structure over the road when we have snow or rain, heavy rain. Is there a drainage system to keep the rain flowing away from, so that it doesn't come right down on the roadway? How are we handling snow removal? It's not going to get pushed over the side of the bridge, right? It's going to get pushed to one end or another. You know, these are
Absolutely.
just anticipating how this is going to be and how it's going to be So.
The rain is the easy one. We have 1% slope on the bridge for drainage, and we'll create actually downspouts they're attached to the piers of the bridge to bring all the water down from there and drain it, in the ground, and some type of drainage inside the ground. So nothing will actually drain on the Great Seneca Highway itself.
Okay.
And as far as snow removal is concerned, but that's something that it's going to be done just like it's done in any other pedestrian bridge over the freeways. We don't have any special way of actually doing this thing, but the bridge will have capacity for snow removal equipment.
Okay.
Actually, this type of bridge, based on the standards in Maryland, they're designed for 5 tons, and this width of the bridge for 10 tons vehicles, as a matter of fact. They can go on the bridge. And that should be take care of the snow removal, I would say. So.
Yeah, that Councilman, we have equipment that, this
We
would
already
be
have
able to
small
use the
equipment.
bridge, is small enough to use it, that, can clear it. And it would be just another site that would be part of Mark's operation during the winter.
Okay. Well, I think we're all excited about, the potential for this thing to come. And I think, it's going to be a great addition. The most important things are how accessible it is. We want to make sure it's well used and it's used as an alternative to the on-grade crossing. And the best way to do that is to make sure it's accessible. So where the locations, accessibility, the ramps and the stairways is actually pretty important. So I'm glad that those questions are asked as well. So, and certainly you seem to have thought about those things already. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rob?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll just pick up where Mike left off with the discussion of the proposed or future potential CCT. So I've got the slide open. I don't know if you need it or not, but it looks to me like the pier side pedestrian access is no longer there. It looks like the pedestrian access is now an island between the buses and the road. Is that?
Which slide are you looking at? What's the number of the slide?
That slide.
Number,
yeah.
Okay.
No,
So if
there
you
is a
look,
pedestrian. As a matter of fact, if you look at the cross section in here, in the cross section, you can see that sidewalk next to the curb. I believe what they have in their mind, the enhancement of the existing sidewalk. If you look at the cross section right in here,
curb, and then it says
Yeah.
it's a 5-foot sidewalk, and then there is a 4 feet of, I believe that's probably I would think that would be a shoulder to the sidewalk.
yeah, but it looks to me like it's Great Seneca, curb, pedestrians walking, buses, then a guardrail preventing any pedestrian access where, so you wouldn't be able to make an immediate, coming down Kentlands Boulevard, you wouldn't be able to make an immediate left and walk on a sidewalk. You'd have to cross over the CCT bus lanes to get into that island sidewalk. Is that correct, or am I misreading this cross-section?
In order to get to that, obviously we have to manipulate that guardrail over there for that access. Yeah. We haven't gone that far, but there are ways of doing that thing to give access to that sidewalk.
Okay.
And the other problem is, the sidewalk is continuous, and the city line is continuous.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, at one point they have to cross, the city line in order, to access.
I mean, not to get into details,
side,
but just the overarching idea is my preference would be is that if you have pedestrians who aren't crossing Great Seneca, they don't have to cross 2 bus lanes to remain on the same side and do pedestrian access either north on Seneca or south on Seneca. That's just the...
I think that CCT path, though, is going to ramp up to a higher grade.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want a sidewalk on the inside.
Well, just,
But I'm, all right, I'm looking at the aerial that shows, you know, the two different alternatives next to each other, and it looks like the staircase, this proposed staircase, is farther in from Great Seneca Highway,
yeah.
right?
No, I'm not talking
So
about
right
people
here.
crossing the bridge. I'm talking about people who just want to walk onto and remain on the same side, the Kentland side of Great Seneca. Anyway, maybe I haven't looked at the future CCT plans well enough.
So the sidewalk is not going to be at the same grade as the CCT lanes at that point.
Oh, is that the
So
elevated platform?
It's going to be elevated.
Okay, so it's
above,
across.
so
it's
that's
across
why you can't-
under. Oh,
Yeah.
So the elevation is not. It's up here.
Yeah.
Okay. So this would remain
Because it
green
will rise
space,
as
or
it goes up.
okay.
Great
Just
Seneca.
if that's true, if you can still have access, that's fine with me. But okay. So I shared Ryan's concern about the access, particularly for the MedImmune employees. So for me, it would be important actually to have an at-grade entrance from the elevated MedImmune building straight onto some portion of the meandering ramp. I think that would be probably the best and most efficient way for those employees to come and enjoy the benefits of the Kentlands, whether it be for lunch or for dinner. So not only would you said it'd be possible, I would say it'd be very important to have that kind of access.
Yeah, I think we can incorporate that at
Okay.
the design level. Not to be expensive.
And then I agree with my colleagues about the aesthetics of the bridge. We have very few signature Gaithersburg-esque type bridges. The one I can think of right now is the access on Samoa, where we've stylized that bridge to reflect the city. This would be another good opportunity through design to give it that kind of aesthetic. And then finally, I just wanted to get you thinking about, I like the meandering design the best. I think it's kind of soothing in the way it's generated. It doesn't have any hard edges, but it also goes through a lot of green space, which is now going to be accessible. And I'd like you to start thinking about activating that green space. It might be a good place to actually have plantings, benches, maybe even certain amenities like a park type for the MedImmune employees to come down, or the Orchard, Quinchorder Park folks to come in and access. And as a secondary, obviously, as a secondary use to the important bridge crossing. I guess my last question was, can you give me an example of, this would be a 200-foot prefab span, of that being used around here locally?
Oh yes, what we did actually, we closely work with the prefabricator contact in the area, as a matter of fact, in this part of the United States, of these bridges. The limit of this size of bridge is 250 foot long, of this type, bowstring. The one that you see for the wolf trap is 170 foot long.
Single span?
Yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, that's a 3-span, but the middle span is 170. Just
okay.
The middle span itself. So 200 feet is not an issue. As a matter of fact, that's how they worked the details of it, and they gave us the detailed estimate, how much it will cost and everything. They're engineers and the fabricators and all. We worked with them during this project.
Okay.
Just to make sure that what we are saying is what we are proposing is a doable thing, which it is.
So 200 feet is not pushing the state of the
No,
art for
it's
this
not.
type of
I would say 250, it's still feasible, but pushing for this type of bridge. But 200 feet is okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I know that Rob mentioned the bridge. It would be better if it was more accessible to a building. I'm looking at the aerial shot, and I'm just wondering how much it would have to be extended in order for it to meet one of these buildings.
Oh, no. So what I'm talking about
The
is,
property.
so you see MedImmune, the buildings, and there's the parking garage there.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is an access directly to some portion of the entry ramp onto the bridge. to make it easier and more convenient for the employees to essentially walk to the corner of their property and hop right on the span.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was talking
yeah.
Actually, from
Is
the
the
parking
ramp,
lot.
is the ramp fenced? Is the ramp fenced, or is it just a path?
It doesn't have railings, I think. The ramp.
Doesn't have to have railings at
No,
least.
the
partly
ramp,
because of
one
ADA.
side of it is the hill, the other side has a fence, 4 foot 6 inches. That,
So on the uphill side, there's no fence, correct?
no, there's
Yeah,
no
but you wanna
fence on
make
the ramp.
you wanna
Ramp
make-
has pedestrian guardrail,
Right.
pedestrian barrier on one side, which is a railing, pedestrian railing, 4 foot 6 inches.
On one side?
One
no?
side only, the other side is the hill itself.
That's what I'm asking. So if you put a little path from
Yeah.
the upper
Yeah.
hill
Yeah.
part of the hill.
That's all we're asking.
Yeah, that's doable, yeah.
I think that's-
That topic was actually discussed in the meetings we've had with MedImmune. They are acutely sensitive of cut-through traffic through the campus, so they're still thinking about
Yeah.
whether they want that. I personally think, they have thousands of employees there that could use this bridge, and they're not gonna be inclined to walk all the way down that hill. They're gonna want some sort of direct access, but they are still thinking about it on their property at the moment.
Where would they be cutting through to?
Or further.
Quince Orchard Park, Quince Orchard Road, if you were walking from the Goddard School on your map there, or something like that. I'm just saying how it was handled when we talked to MedImmune staff. They're still thinking about it, and
If there's no path, people will make a path. So
Yeah.
that's what's likely to happen, and I think.
we suggested they may want to make a
Best
path.
way is wait till the path is made, then figure out how to make it permanent, so.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Very exciting project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, next, Ray Rokes, Planning Code. We're gonna talk about, this is a courtesy review, basically to add one more accepted use at Washingtonian that's not currently listed.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council.
Good evening.
Staff is before you tonight to present a courtesy review for application ASDP 7895-2018 and seeks guidance on how to proceed with this application. The subject properties are part of the Washingtonian and Rio Centers and are zoned MXD mixed-use development. This application comes before you pursuant to Section 24-198C of the City Code, which states that staff shall present the application to council as a courtesy review for amendments to an SDP involving a change of use. Following the courtesy review, the council shall either deem that the application has a minor effect and thereby direct the Planning Commission to make a final decision, or the council may direct that the amendment be referred to the Planning Commission for further evaluation, public hearing, and recommendation, and then the council shall thereafter approve or disapprove the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Staff would like to note that either way the council decides, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing following the decision tonight. Staff has tentatively scheduled that public hearing for Wednesday, September 5th, 2018. The combined Washingtonian and Rio sections are currently approved for retail, restaurant, office, theater, and hotel uses and are part of a shared parking agreement. The applicant is requesting that the general use of private education be added to the shared parking and use chart for the section of Washingtonian and Rio Centers here that are bounded by Washingtonian Boulevard and Washingtonian Lake. Specifically, the applicant intends to convert the Marriott pool area here and the former health club pool area in this building to private education use by a third party for swim lessons. Staff has worked with the applicant to ensure that there are no issues with parking regarding the change of use. The Washingtonian and Rio Centers shared parking chart continue to have over 100 spaces more than what is required by code. Only the change of use is before you tonight. No site improvements are proposed with this application. Based on these factors, staff recommends that the council find the application to have a minor impact and direct the Planning Commission to make a final decision on the amendment, and be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ray. I couldn't agree more. This is a minor impact. It's just adding another use. It's, you know, to allow for private education in this one spot that already exists. What's the pleasure of the council?
I agree with the mayor.
Someone want to make a motion?
Well, I agree, but I just had a question. So the impact is there isn't going to be much impact on current parking levels and spaces for either the health club or the hotel.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So they'll use the existing parking structure.
Yes.
And on-street parking. Okay.
You want to make the motion?
I'll move.
Second.
I'll move it. Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of deeming this a minor impact, a minor effect, and passing it to the Planning Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Nice job, Ray.
Yeah.
Really fast.
Really fast.
What else?
Next is we have public comments. This is the time when the mayor and council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any topic that's not a public hearing. We do have one public hearing tonight on Asbury bonds. So if you're here to speak about that, then just hold off. We're going to get to that next. We ask that you state your name and address or neighborhood for the record. Keep your comments no more than 3 minutes. When your time's down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow. And when it's up, it'll beep and turn red. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak tonight? Not seeing any. Okay. Then we will move on to our public hearing. And let's see who's, is this you, Lynn?
It'll be Cheryl Guth, who is our outside bond counsel.
Okay.
Who'll be handling.
Okay. Cheryl Guth. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Cheryl Guth, McGuire Woods, bond counsel to the city of Gaithersburg. We have before you a public hearing regarding the proposed issuance of bonds for the benefit of Asbury Atlantic. The purpose of the hearing is to allow members of the community to speak on this issue, and it's required by the Internal Revenue Code.
All right, and in addition, we are not only having the public hearing tonight, but then the next item is to actually vote on a resolution here. So usually we'll do a public hearing and then there'll be some period of time where the record's open. But in this case, because time was really of the essence, we are doing this all in one evening.
Yes, we are asking you to consider the resolution tonight as well.
Yeah, okay. So do you have any presentation or?
I do have certain members here from Asbury Atlantic, if you would like to hear from them with respect to the project and the refinancing.
Just a little bit of background about what's.
I think
Sure.
the benefits to the public and to the and to the city of this.
So this is not the first time that the city has considered issuing bonds for Asbury. The relationship goes back over 20 years. And this particular project is to refinance certain bonds that you've previously issued, as well as to provide some funds for some capital improvements to the facilities here in Gaithersburg. The tax-exempt nature of the bonds does allow Asbury to borrow on a cost that's less than they otherwise would be able to do if they went to a bank to borrow the money. And so one of the benefits, obviously, to them is that then they have decreased cost of borrowing.
And again, I think it's important to note that this represents no obligation on behalf of the city.
There's absolutely no obligation on the part of the city. The way the transaction is structured is the city lends the money to Asbury Atlantic, and then they're required to pay it back. And the terms of the bond state very specifically that the city is to have no pecuniary liability on these bonds. If Asbury Atlantic doesn't pay, the bondholders don't get paid, and they fully understand that.
Okay.
In addition, Asbury Atlantic is paying all of the costs and expenses of financing. There are no costs to the city. You're indemnified under the documents for any costs that you might incur later. So there's absolutely no liability for the city.
Essentially, it's all we've always sort of looked at it as a courtesy that we're glad to do, given our partnership with Asbury for 90 plus years at this point.
Correct. Like I said, this allows them to borrow on a tax-exempt basis, so it does provide them with a benefit of decreased financing costs.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Since I haven't been on the council when any of these sorts of transactions have been passed us before, I'd just like to clarify something. So there's a lender and a borrower, and we're in the middle, basically?
Yes, and this is kind of called a conduit financing, where you act as a conduit. There will be a bond underwriter who will sell these bonds to certain purchasers, mostly institutional investors. And so then the money kind of flows through you via a bond trustee. In this case, it's Manufacturers and Traders Trust Company as the trustee. So they'll take the funds and then funnel them out to repay the old bonds and to provide the funds available to Asbury Atlantic to make the improvements. So none of the money touches the city's hands or the city's books in any way.
And the city isn't being rated for creditworthiness as part of this
Not
transaction?
at all.
either.
Asbury Atlantic is getting a rating on its own finances because those are the only ones that are backing up these bonds.
Okay.
And the only way that Asbury has access to this financing formula is because of the state law that only entities like the city have access to, and that's why we have to be involved in the transaction.
Yes, both on the federal and the state level, correct, sir.
Oriane, did you have a question, or was it answered?
Yeah, I think it was answered with Neil's inquiry.
Any other questions, Rob?
Could you just quickly give me the 30,000-foot abbreviated explanation as to how we're insulated from any liability in this issuance?
Well, under the state law, the Maryland Economic Development Revenue Bond Act, it specifically states that you're to have no pecuniary liability by law. We write that into all of the documents. And again, Asbury Atlantic promises to indemnify you if you would ever have any cost or expense, but they are paying all costs of the financing.
Okay, so if a disappointed bondholder were to sue us, we would have to enter into litigation and defend it, but Asbury would be
Correct.
agreeing to indemnify.
Correct. And just from personal experience, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've done hundreds of these transactions. The bondholders fully understand what they're getting in terms of the security for the financing and that it's not backed by the issuer.
I mean, is this typical? I mean, I'm lukewarm about the city entering into these agreements. I'm willing to support it based on what's happened in the past, but
It's very,
I don't kinda wanna get
it's
into
very typical, sir, yes. I mean, there have been probably thousands of bond issues like this issued by the state of Maryland, by its agencies, by municipalities, the county, Montgomery County and other counties in the state of Maryland.
Okay.
Lynn, did you want to speak to it, or you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly Cheryl's firm has shared all of the documents with me. I do review them as well, just to ensure that the city is protected, but our full faith and credit is not impacted in any way by these bonds.
Has the city entered into these agreements with any other organizations within the city? Do you guys, anybody know?
Shady Grove Hospital.
Shady Grove Hospital, yeah.
Come on up, Stephanie. We need you at a mic.
Sorry, didn't mean to make you get up.
The existing bonds with Asbury are the only ones that we have outstanding with throughout the city. So.
Currently, but historically, we also did do them for Shady Grove Hospital, but they're not outstanding anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And how much are the current outstanding bonds with Asbury? Are those the same ones that are being refinanced, or?
I think the par value is roughly 115 million. And that's the face value of the existing bonds and debt that is being refinanced.
And how long is the term?
Some of it goes out to 2032.
No interest.
Okay.
Okay, just one last question.
And also just to speak to the frequency of this, this is also very common in other states, so it's not specific just to Maryland. Conduit debt is often issued in other states as well, so it's a very typical type arrangement throughout the U.S.
How typical is it for the city? I mean, and what is our criteria for selecting Asbury or Shady Grove versus any other entity that wants to seek to use our full faith or credit?
We were asked, right?
Tony, why don't you address that?
Well, they're not using our credit, by the way.
They're not using our
They really select us.
They're just using our status as an entity that's eligible for this kind of bond under state law.
Correct.
They're not using our credit at all.
Well, they're using our status as the issuer, and then they're indemnifying us after payment, or for. I just want to find out, you know, how frequent this is, what our criteria for the selection of entities that would have access to this, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable with us becoming the lender of choice for all organizations within Gaithersburg.
I think we did this 8 years ago.
We did.
Right?
Okay.
Yep.
And the only concerns were actually members of Asbury who didn't think it was wise at the time to refinance. And they complained about it, and I think what the outcome of refinancing actually resulted in Asbury making significant improvements and also saving a considerable amount of money for their members. I think the stability of Asbury is important to the city. This helps them become a much more stable entity fiscally, financially. So
Yeah, no,
I think it's a benefit, so I'm not particularly concerned, given the assurances of our city attorney and the history of this in the past, the fact that the reason there's a hospital at Shady Grove is basically because we did bonds for, we did that as well for Shady Grove Adventist. So I'm pretty confident that we're covered by this. There's no risk. So
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it might be reason to do a work session sometime in the near future to sort of discuss how this process works and why we do it with certain entities and not others. The entities we've done it with have all been nonprofits, right?
Yeah,
Do they have to be required to be nonprofits under law?
Under federal tax law, generally, nonprofits are very small manufacturing facilities. It's not as wide open as it used to be in the 80s. So.
Right. And in order to make it viable as a financial transaction, it has to be a large enough, I would assume, request. I mean, to do very small ones with all the costs associated with actually doing.
Correct. There's a point where you get too small and the cost, overweigh the benefits of the financing.
Yeah, and I don't know, Tony may know this. Has there ever been a time where any entity approached the city about doing a similar transaction and we told them no? I'm not aware of that in my time here, but
not to my knowledge. No.
Okay, all right. So.
Okay. Well, I'd like to open it up. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak one way or the other on this, same rules. State your name and address or neighborhood. Keep your comments no more than 3 minutes. Stephanie, you don't get time. You're staff.
I will just note that the city did receive a email support and wanted to enter that into the record, just supporting the proposal. So.
Okay. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak? One way or another? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right. Well then, let's see how are we wrapping this up? We're going to have
later in the agenda.
This says close the record on Monday, August. Oh, this is Monday. So we have to vote to close the record.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. We will come back to this right after from the mayor and council, which we're going to start with Council Member Mike Sesma.
All right, first of all, I hope everybody's having a good summer and staying cool. I think we got another heat alert tomorrow, triple-digit heat index tomorrow, so take care of yourself, stay hydrated, look after your elderly neighbors or those with young children or people have trouble with the heat. So take care. But it's not supposed to rain very much, so we're still going to be drying out. I want to thank the Rotary for being here today to announce the first Linda M. Hanson Scholarship. I want to thank them for doing this at City Hall, too. Linda was a pretty special person. So, and to congratulate Kiana Taylor, the first recipient of the Linda Hanson Scholarship. So I'm pretty sure she's going to do quite well with that scholarship. I don't have a whole lot except on Friday the 27th of July, I attended the Region Forward Coalition quarterly meeting, covered a number of issues that I think are important to the city. One of them was about accessibility measures, a presentation on the Region Forward calls for walkable mixed-use communities and with housing and transportation choices. So we talked about the various progress in the Region Forward plan and how that's being implemented in different jurisdictions throughout the Council of Governments regions. Another one was targets to illuminate equity and inclusion in the Region Forward plan. So I actually volunteered to be on a committee to look at that, to consider how equity and inclusion can be weaved into the Region Forward vision. So And then we had a discussion of Montgomery County's Smart Growth Initiative, in which one of the projects profiled was the public safety campus on at what used to be the former National Geographic site. So I guess the county, Greg Ossent, our former planning director, explained how they optimized that situation. This was one example that they gave. The other one was the Shady Grove sector plan, how they optimized the situation, the key features of that, and used as an example of how to implement smart growth programs.
Did they include the sidewalk? Did you mention the sidewalk?
I didn't mention the sidewalk, Brian. You know, and but they did mention how important the cooperation and collaboration with the city was in advancing the plan and actually saving the county and its residents a lot of money. So, and also looking forward to the future. And then we had a report on commercial construction and vacancy rates across the metropolitan Washington. And it's good to know from our reports that we've had is that our vacancy rates is about half of what the regional vacancy rate is for commercial buildings. And finally, there was a presentation on reclaiming lost spaces, strategies for reusing the region's older empty office buildings. In some ways, some of it applies to Gaithersburg, but I think there's some good examples of how that could be done. I think we have to; those are things we need to pay attention to. So we'll have more on that going forward. So that's all I have tonight.
Thanks, Mike. Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's good to be back after missing 2 sessions. I'm heartfelt pride that you guys were able to carry on without me.
2 of the shortest meetings we've had in a long time.
Well then, I'll help make this shorter. Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. Ryan.
Not much tonight. Echo what's already been said. The city does some great events at their observatory park for nighttime sky watching, and we have the Perseid meteor shower coming up this weekend. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in that sort of thing. A number of us have been to those events in the last couple of years. They're really fun, good crowds, well organized, and it's just a fun evening outing. Stay up late and watch for some shooting stars. And then I want to encourage everybody to attend the Montgomery County Ag Fair next week. Should be a lot of fun. A number of us will be at the 4-H parade to kick off the fair on Sunday. And that's all I've got this evening. Thanks.
Thanks, Neil.
Wow, it's a new record, Ryan.
Totally. Sure.
Let's see, I came a little late to this meeting tonight because there was another session regarding vandalism and burglary that took place a week before last in the Kentlands that the community was very concerned about. I'd like to really commend the work by our city's police department in conjunction with Montgomery County Police as well in investigating the situation. Basically, there was some unfortunate graffiti left on a neighbor's fence that appeared to be gang graffiti, and there were some items taken from garages in the neighborhood on the same evening. We're not entirely sure those 2 were related, but would seem like a little too much of a coincidence. So police have already taken some action and are looking at other ways to deal with the situation, but are probably currently still finishing up the meeting with the concerned citizens in the neighborhood who have also banded together. I'd also like to thank the city's Public Works Department for coming in and removing the graffiti from the fence, as well as State Highway removing some additional graffiti from Route 28. Had a number of meetings and attended meetings over the last several weeks since our last meeting. John Schlichting over here, and just getting his attention. Thanks, John, for organizing the series of lectures on new urbanism that we're having at Kentlands Mansion, co-sponsored by the city and the Kentlands Foundation. I thought the last one was particularly interesting in terms of was a person who was involved in creating some of the new urbanist communities at the part of the very beginning team. So that was very informative. Lorianne and I together met with some of the group called United We Dream, who had attended in mass at recent city council meetings. Came into the meeting not entirely clear how to help members of their community versus what they were asking for. Left the meeting not entirely clear as well, but I'm sure we'll have continued discussions and figure out how to help a lot of people in our community who are seeking refuge from pretty terrible stuff and facing some political headwinds at this point. Also had a chance to give a shout out to one of the nominees for County Executive, Mark Elrich. I had a chance to sit down with him for about an hour and a half and have a really spirited discussion about many issues related to the city of Gaithersburg and the region in general. We spent a lot of time talking about transportation, about economic development, and many other issues. It's always interesting to talk to Mark. He's got a little different perspective from what I typically have on, particularly on economic development, but is always very thoughtful and open, willing to be out of the box. And just one last point to piggyback on what Ryan just said about the Perseids. Don't bring your telescope or binoculars. You really want to view the whole sky when you're looking at meteors. It's fun. It's very cool. The later you can stay out, the better, because you actually get a better show after midnight, because the Earth is actually swinging into the meteors at that point. So drink coffee that night.
You don't need a helmet, right?
Yeah. You might. There was just a very large meteor that landed in Greenland, I believe, near an Air Force base there. So a helmet might have been not enough protection for that one.
I think they bring a telescope.
Is that all?
That's all from me, thanks.
You never know what kind of tips you're going to get about life here in this council chamber.
Just let it, for the record, I did not bring up the helmet concept, okay?
Okay, fair enough.
I didn't say.
Let it be known. Lorianne.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I want to again thank the Gaithersburg Rotary Club. I met Linda in 2013 when she was still the treasurer for the Rotary Club. So it's really nice that they've honored her with this legacy to support the ongoing education of our students. So congratulations again to Kiana Taylor. I thought they said Gaithersburg High School, but I was mistaken. It's Quince Orchard, so congrats to Quince Orchard student Kiana once again. I attended a few meetings as well. I actually attended the Montgomery County Ag Fair Operations Luncheon with Mike. We really learned about everything it takes to have a safely operated fair for over a week that provides agricultural awareness, training, and amusement for residents of all ages. There were over 40 people involved in the operations of the fair. So I know in its 70th year, I think they've got it right. So I'm excited. They have lots of attractions that are new this year. So please take time to attend. And as Ryan mentioned, I think the fair is at 4:30 for the 4-H parade is on 4:30 on Sunday. You can learn more on the website. I also attended the first annual Gaithersburg Children's Business Fair. It was sponsored by Epworth United Methodist, Early Learning Center, Acton Academy, the Acton School of Business, and volunteers. They showcase children entrepreneurs. There were over 38 young entrepreneurs that created a product or service, developed a brand, and built their marketing strategy. And these students were on average 8 years old. It was a really fun event. They were responsible for setting up. They sold their items. They had baked goods, lots of slime. So slime is very fun. It's very popular. There were so many different types of slime. So it was just really nice to see our kids putting their talents to use, and hopefully these young people will continue to work at their craft and be motivated to set up shop in Gaithersburg. I also participated in the ribbon cutting for the fountain, probably the most fun ribbon cutting I've experienced. Had a fun water fight with my colleagues and some of the kids. Thank you again to Grandma Kona Ice for the complimentary treats on the warm day. Special thanks to Parks and Recs Director Michelle, her staff, and everyone involved. I know it took the entire city staff, so thank you again for making that fun for the entire community. I serve on the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Environmental Affairs Committee, the Chesapeake Bay and Water Resource Policy Committee, had their meeting. We talked about tree canopy and being a tree city and all the development that we have and the limited green space that we have. We're realizing that tree canopies are important and ensuring that we have the right trees in our community. So we'll be watching that. Tree Montgomery, there's actually a county tree program if you want to learn more. So yeah, that's it. And Neil mentioned that we met with the United We Dream students, and I think we're just waiting on feedback for all the options available to us to move forward and see what options are available. And Lynn is still working on options, or?
Lynn, I was actually going to bring this up. She sent me a draft resolution today, which I'm going to distribute for you guys to take a look at.
Okay. All right, so that is it. I just have one more announcement. The mayor and city council are seeking to fill a vacancy on the Ethics Commission for one full-time member. The Ethics Commission works in conjunction with the city's Department of Legal Services. The commission oversees the annual review of financial disclosure and conflict of interest forms completed by city officials, employees, and members of boards and commissions, as well as requests for advisory opinions and complaints of violations of the ethics laws. The board consists of 3 members and 1 alternate who are appointed by the mayor with the approval of the city council. Members serve staggered 3-year terms and meet as needed. All applicants must reside within the corporate city limits. Resumes and letters of interest should be submitted by 5:00 p.m. on Monday, August 20th via mail to Mayor and City Council, 31 South Summit Avenue, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20877, or email to cityhall@gaithersburgmd.gov. For more information, please visit the city's website or contact City Attorney Lynn Board at 301-258-6310.
Thank you, Lorianne. I want to remind everyone that tomorrow night is National Night Out. There are a number of communities in the city that are doing community events, and we're going to be trying to get around to as many of them as we can. There's probably too many for us to get, for any one of us to hit all of them, but it's a really nice community atmosphere and highly recommended. Next week we will not have a work session, so the next regular session of the Mayor and Council will be on Monday, August 20th, and it's my understanding that we need a motion for a closed executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Gaithersburg conduct a closed executive session tonight, Monday, August 6th, 2018, immediately following the scheduled session, pursuant to the General Provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, Sections 3-305B1I, for the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom it has jurisdiction, and 3-305B8, to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation. The topics to discuss are a personnel matter, to conduct the city attorney's annual performance evaluation, and the consideration of a request to participate in an amicus brief in a pending appeal before the Maryland Court of Special Appeals involving an alleged inverse condemnation arising from local government zoning actions.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. From the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Before my comments, this might be a moment. Do you want to go back and approve the July 23rd minutes?
Now that Neil's here?
Sure.
Now that Neil's here.
Yeah, we sort of deferred that because we didn't have the number of votes we needed. So, what's the pleasure of the council?
Move approval of the minutes from July 23rd, the work session.
Second.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And who is
I will
abstaining?
be abstaining, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Abstain, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, so those minutes pass with 3-0 with 2 abstentions. Council members Spiegel and Wu. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, real quick, the neighborhood parking survey that I sent out is ready to go out. We expect that to go out either late this week or by Monday, so that we can get that feedback started. Those of you that drive in 355 southbound may see that the cemetery fence project is about halfway complete. The stone veneer's up, the brick piers are mostly up, the precast goes up next, and then the decorative elements and the iron. They're now looking at completing it next month. Obviously, we're dependent on weather, which has not been great, but they are making good progress, and it looks really good. Hopefully, people had a chance to see my email this afternoon about a proposed site for a cell tower off of Great Seneca Highway. We have a proposal from AT&T. There's a little bit of a history there, given that AT&T has a facility on the east side of MedImmune, but when the new parking garage was built, it reduced signal strength in Kentlands, Lakelands especially, pretty dramatically based on the feedback that we got at the time. We asked them to go look for some other sites. They're now requesting permission to move forward with the site somewhere in the forested area off of Great Seneca Highway. They have not chosen a site. That would be dependent on their radio frequency tests. But at issue tonight is whether you want the issue handled by staff or whether you want to have a public process. We've used both processes historically. This is one of those things, kind of like bonds, it comes up every 4 or 5 years. We don't do this that often. For example, the facility on the parking garage across the street was handled by staff. The one at Kelly Park, I believe we had a public process where people came and discussed it.
Yep.
So really, we just need to give feedback to AT&T which process you want to use for this particular site. We don't really have any architecturals. We don't have any height. It's just they're kind of taking our temperature about whether we're willing to consider that as a site.
So this is going to be a full
tower.
It's
yeah.
150 feet or what is it, 100 feet or something?
Generally, it started about 100. The one on the parking garage, it started 80 feet off the ground, so I would say that was about 120, 125.
Is there a reason they haven't approached MedImmune about using the top of their garage? The upper levels of their garage?
Memory serves me, they did approach MedImmune, and MedImmune is no longer interested in additional facilities on their site. They also approached the KCA about some sites internal, which really didn't work very well, in my opinion anyway. They did not. We reminded them that there was a site approved at Lakelands Park for T-Mobile that has expired, that never got built. That did not apparently meet their requirements. This is where they want to be. So we're obviously not approving anything. We're just entering into a process.
Are you soliciting the input of the council now, or just telling us that you want our input at some point in the future?
Sooner the better.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, if we're going around
Public process.
I will tell you, I'm sure a lot of my colleagues agree, if not all of them. I think that this is one that requires a public process. The proposed general area is right in between 2 populous residential neighborhoods, and I think we owe it to the public just to be, fully transparent on the process, regardless of what the outcome ends up being. So I would support full public process.
I see a head nodding. I see a head nodding. I see a head nod. Okay, public process.
Very good. Thank you.
All right.
That is all I have.
Economic development?
I have that as well.
Okay.
Tom was not able to be with us tonight. He only sent word that he and Sharon spent a day in College Park recently at a seminar on the new opportunity zones that have been created. It's a federal program to encourage investment in underserved census tracts. There are 3 such census tracts in Gaithersburg, primarily around the Old Town and the mall. And he will be bringing a brief PowerPoint at the next meeting on August 20th in lieu of his regular report about the Opportunity Zone program.
Okay, very good. Next, we're going to move on to ordinances, resolutions, regulations, and we're going to start off with the economic development revenue bond for benefit of Asbury that we just had the public hearing on and closed the record on. Since it's so fresh in our minds, do we have discussion, or would someone like to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Well done. Let's see, next, we have contract for roadway crack sealing, microsurfacing, and Michael Johnson. Go ahead.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of Council. The resolution before you for consideration authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract for micropaving, crack sealing, and associated works. Based upon the pavement assessment that is performed, we've identified several treatment options that, when used, would extend the life of municipal streets without the city incurring the significant cost that are usually associated with roadway reconstruction. The contract establishes unit prices for crack sealing and micropaving. And just to explain quickly, crack sealing roads, just due to expansion and contraction because of the temperature fluctuations that we have, flexible pavements tend to crack. And when those cracks are opened, water gets down into the base and can deteriorate or shorten the life of the road. So sealing those cracks is a very good and affordable preventive maintenance measure that's used to preserve pavements. Micropaving is a thin wearing surface that is put on the road. It encompasses the entire wearing surface, and it adds additional life to the pavement without the significant cost that is traditionally associated with a full mill and repave. This project was advertised on May 29th, and bids were received on June 25th. We had two bidders. One of the bidders was non-responsive. Their bid was fatally flawed, and we had to reject it. So pursuant to the city's purchasing regulations, it authorized staff to enter into negotiations with the one remaining bidder. And we were able to, we brought the bidder in, and they were Fort Myer Construction Corporation, and we were able to negotiate some changes in the pricing that they had bid. So we got about $45,000 savings over what was bid on the basis of award. This contractor, Fort Myer Construction, is also the contractor that Montgomery County uses and has used for many years for providing similar work, crack sealing and slurry sealing. They're not doing micropaving. And when we attempted to examine their bid structure to see if it was something that we could ride, when we did so, we felt that going through the negotiation was in the better interest of the city. So once that was completed, we decided to make an award in the amount of $1,135,000, and that would be for the first year, and there would be an optional automatic renewal of one additional year with this vendor. Any questions?
Comments?
So why is the amount of the contract less than the amount that is listed here as the negotiated number? You've got a number here of $1,176,000.
Right, and that's the basis of award. We have, whenever we set up a bid, we have to make assumption on quantities, and then they provide prices, and that is given to all bidders, and that serves as the basis of the award. That is separate from the amount of material that we elect to award the contract for, and that's why it's different.
If not, would someone like to move the resolution?
So the county's done work with this company, but we haven't had any experience with them. But
the county has worked with them extensively. They do most of the county's crack sealing and slurry sealing work and additional work for the county. But we elected, when we did our pavement management analysis, to go with micropaving as opposed to slurry sealing. Okay. So it wasn't an equal to sort of ride their contract. We wouldn't have gotten bid prices. We would have had to negotiate, and I don't think that was a favorable way to approach it.
They're a big contractor in DC, right? I see them
Yes,
all
they
over.
are.
They're quite big, and they're quite they do quite good work. So we're comfortable that we get a good product out of them and help to preserve the roads that we have.
This is not exactly related to this particular resolution, but in the recent repaving in my neighborhood, I noticed that the contractor was using some kind of almost like a cloth material to go underneath the asphalt.
Right.
Is that a new development? I don't remember seeing that in other projects, or is that something that's been around for a while? I mean, what's the impact of that on cracking?
It's been around for a while, and as you pointed, it's to arrest cracks from reflecting through. Like cracks can start lower down and make their way through, reflect their way through to the surface. So this barrier is a crack arresting barrier. And it's we've used it extensively in Gaithersburg for 30 some years at least. Yeah, it's been around a while and well tested.
Okay. Well, I had a question. I see 2 streets. What's the I guess the total square feet of like the entire city? Because I know that this is just for 1 year. It's going to be 2 streets. I know that there's more streets that have to be done in the city.
All right. Now for this year, we propose to micropave West Deer Park and Edison and Girard, excuse me. And then there'll be several streets that will be receive crack sealing, and that will come out of the pavement management program that we run. So it identifies priority streets for crack sealing, and then based on a field investigation to confirm the information being given to us from the program, we will make a determination on the exact linear footage of crack sealing that we would perform.
So are you expecting this to continue for multiple years?
Yes.
For how long do you think?
It's an ongoing process. Okay. It's an ongoing process to eventually sort of keep our PCI based on the right at around 77.
Essentially every year.
Right.
But the reason doing it this way is a lot, in the long run, a lot less expensive than just fully redoing streets when they fail.
Right.
This is essentially a program for maintaining streets so they last longer.
Correct. That's correct. And based on that, it gives it for less money we get a better product. We get more bang for our money, so to speak, for our buck, so to speak.
Okay.
Someone want to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Sean Stevens, next. We're going to talk about new police vehicles.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The resolution before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of 9 police vehicles. These vehicles will consist of 7 marked and 2 unmarked 2019 Ford Police Interceptor utility all-wheel drive vehicles. The Department of Public Works would like to utilize the State of Maryland contract, which was awarded on September 29, 2017 and runs through September 30th, 2018. This contract was competitively bid by the State of Maryland and satisfies all requirements of the city's procurement policy. These 9 units were approved as part of the city's FY19 budget in the Asset Replacement Fund. I would also like to point out that in verifying the best value to the city, staff received check prices which confirm savings of approximately 5 to 8% per vehicle. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions, comments?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment that just reminds me that when we went out to the MML convention, I picked up some literature from the city of Hyattsville who obtained on grant some all-electric interceptors, and I had meant to bring you the paperwork, and this reminds me of it, and I'm going to bring it to you. Sorry. Thank you.
Otherwise, would someone like to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Next, Lynn, you're going to lead us in the amendment to the annexation agreement for Washingtonian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to have some assistance from Rob Robinson and Frank Johnson on this matter.
Okay.
This is the beginning of a process to enter into a 5th amendment to the annexation agreement for the Washingtonian. By way of of background, this is part of a larger annexation. It's a 49-acre parcel owned by the Pedestrian companies, but what's commonly known as Washingtonian Rio. Washington Rio has made the request to the city to amend the annexation as part of their kind of visioning process to look at the future of this development and the viability. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob, who's going to talk a little bit about the background, and then Frank's going to cover the requested changes. What we're seeking from the council this evening is a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate the amendment to the annexation agreement, and then we would come back to you in future for authorization to execute. So I want to acknowledge that Scott Wallace is here, as well as Paul Weinschneck with the Peterson companies, and they are here to answer any questions that you may have as well. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone.
Good evening. So as Lynn mentioned, I'm going to briefly go through some of the background. So on the screen right now is the entire section that was annexed in 1991. The important thing was the annexation agreement associated with this gave a cap of approximately 4.5 million square feet of commercial development under the MXD zone. The annexation agreement has been amended 4 times, the last time being June 18th of 2018, and that was the conversion of the office building in Washingtonian North to senior housing. The approved but unbuilt non-residential density of Washingtonian is approximately 2.2 million left of that original 4.5. As to the complex itself, as Lynn mentioned, it's approaching 20 years of age. It currently sits with approximately 720,000 square feet of commercial development. Everybody's been there, we know it's office, it's retail, it's entertainment, it's restaurant uses in multiple buildings. But the issue is currently the annexation agreement and the SDP, and the original SDP limit the permitted uses on the property to the office, hotel, and retail development. So as was mentioned, Peterson is looking long-term to keep this as a sustainable mixed-use destination. And what the main tenets of the proposal and the plan up here, basically divides it up into 4 parcels. It wants to add residential and other uses to keep this, to build upon the foundation that's there now as an entertainment and retail destination, but keep it sustainable over the next 20 years coming up. So the proposal is asking, up to 1145 residential uses that can be a mix of housing types depending upon its location, and to increase the commercial density, including hotels, with approximately 500,000 square feet of additional development. And as I said, this includes, a mix of uses that go beyond just retail. Many of the things we've talked about integrate, like manufacturing, amusement centers, all these various things. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Johnson.
Okay, and I'll just briefly highlight really the 8 areas, and make sure you guys can hear. The 8 areas that are being asked for, as Rob mentioned, up to exactly 1,145 residential units, up to 60,000 additional square feet of integrated light manufacturing, which is kind of a range there, but of what can be selected, up to 150,000 additional square feet of self-service storage with appropriate restrictions, and that certainly would be part of the negotiation as to the number of facilities and where they would be located. Up to 445 hotel rooms, overall increase in commercial density of 546,000 square feet, permitted heights to range from 4 to 10 stories depending on the facility, permitted transfer of density between parcels, but certainly up to the total amount, not to exceed that, but some transfer would be allowed, and adding new equipment and increasing accessibility for the existing public play area located near the carousel in the northwest corner of the property. Again, these are the 8 items that that have been identified that would really be the subject of the negotiation.
Great. Thank you all for the presentation. I had an opportunity to meet with the applicant, and everything generally looked good to me. And again, if a change is going to be made, there'd be another process that would have to come before us, because that's what happens with MXD, correct? The one question mark was self-storage, and I think staff is well aware of concerns that are likely to come from the dais up here about self-storage. You know, my feeling is we'd want it as invisible as possible, because this area is really a thriving, shining jewel in Gaithersburg, and self-storage just isn't that kind of exciting use. But I'm eager to hear what my fellow council members think. Mike, you want to start?
Yeah, I also had an opportunity to meet with the applicants. I thought they were pretty transparent in their ideas. Certainly some good ideas here, and I guess given that it's over 20 years old, it's time to think about other options here and the evolution of the property and the MXD. So I had the same feeling about self-storage. I don't think self-storage is a very activating use. Certainly doesn't generate a lot of jobs, or a lot of traffic that you would want in an area that had a dense retail mix. So, and I'm not sure it's necessarily compatible with increasing the density of the residential units that aren't there now. So I would be surprised if that became an option. I think for the benefit of those who might be listening out there is to give us perhaps a description of what kind of business you would expect for integrated light manufacturing. I'll just ask the applicants in. Just some examples of what integrated light manufacturing might be.
For the record, Scott Wallace, and for those in Walker. It's the type of use category. I really appreciate Rob highlighting it for us when we met with him. These are your distilleries, your craft distilleries, things like that. I think that's probably the most logical one. There's a 3D printing operation in another development, I believe in Alexandria, that would come under that, which is actually fun to watch and fun for people in and of itself. So that's really those kind of quirky, unique, fun uses that you're seeing activate areas across the region.
Great. I like the first option that you mentioned. Yeah. I think that actually does just generate some interest. Yes. And it would generate the kind of traffic that, I mean, we see this happening throughout the state, I think, and if it's, well, anyway.
Yeah. Who else has comments or questions? Rob?
So just say that the devil's going to be in the details going forward, but conceptually, I think that whatever we can do to help one of our marquee partners in maintaining the thriving density and culture and commercial viability that you have going on there, I'm all for. It looks like the uses that you're proposing, not necessarily the self-storage, but everything else seems geared towards exactly that, making this a higher density destination that folks from not just in Gaithersburg but all around the region can come to and enjoy.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I'll echo what has already been said. A little bit of concern about the self-storage, but I think that can also be worked out in future processes and certainly as part of the negotiation with the city manager. But obviously that's just one little small piece and one option of a much bigger proposal, and so we have to keep that in mind. And you know what everyone has already said about maintaining the vibrancy of this area of the city, which has been such an important driver of cultural and economic success. Not only maintaining it, as my colleagues have said, but also positioning it for future growth and evolution is really important. And I think everybody at the city leadership gets that. And so I think, you know, despite a few little hesitations about little details here and there, generally speaking, I suspect we're all going to be very much on board with empowering the city manager to sit down with the applicant and really work through this, because we do value very, very much the importance of this center.
Well, I just want to, I won't belabor the point. Everyone said, made really good points. I met with the applicants as well, and I'm excited that they're looking at the long-term sustainability of very important retail and hopefully dwelling place for the city. So thank you.
Neil?
Just not much more to add. I mean, I also met with the applicant a month or so ago, I guess, at this point, and also expressed some dismay over the addition of self-storage. I think Rob Robinson, in a separate conversation, made the point that if there are apartments, there's probably a need for self-storage as well. I guess that makes sense. It's certainly, not something that we see as the best use of real estate inside our city, but I understand that people need a place to put their stuff. I was also a little surprised in the beginning to see that there was an option for hotel space, given the plethora of hotel rooms in that particular part of the city. But if there's a need, then it's fine with me. And as we go forward with any specific proposals, I'm sure we'll discuss the details at that point.
Great. So someone want to move the resolution to authorize the negotiations?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to invite Laura Howell to the table or the podium, whichever she prefers. Talk about the Beecraft annexation.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. This is the introduction of the resolution for application X7969-2018, authorizing the annexation into the city of Gaithersburg of approximately 1.8 acres of land adjacent to the corporate limits of the city and to establish RA zoning for said property. The subject area is outlined in red here on the aerial map, and it includes portions of 4 parcels located along East Deer Park Drive and Central Avenue. The city line, which is blue here, currently bisects these parcels, so the area of annexation is just the portions of the parcels that are located in the county. This is the annexation plan. The annexation area, again, totals about 1.8 acres, and it is within the city's maximum expansion limits. The area is currently zoned County R200, which allows residential development with a density of up to 2.18 units per acre. The applicant is requesting the city's RA zoning, which matches the zoning on the city portions of the parcels, and it allows the same density as the county's R200, 2.18 units per acre. Should the Mayor and Council vote to introduce the resolution this evening, the annexation process will begin, and the Mayor and Council public hearing is scheduled for October 15th, 2018.
Great. So again, this is just an introduction, and if we vote to introduce, that's when staff notifies the county,
yes,
and the county gives us some sort of feedback about how their
yes,
blessing or not on this.
Yes, they just have to determine if the zoning will be substantially different from what is proposed.
Right.
From currently what it is zoned as.
Okay. Questions, comments for this introduction? If not, does someone want to move?
I'll move the resolution of introduction.
Second.
Or introduction of resolution. I don't know how you say that. Move the introduction of the resolution.
Right.
I don't know. None of us know.
It's you move to introduce the resolution.
Right.
So, okay. And we have a second. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Very well done. From the city attorney.
Nothing further.
Anything from any other staff? Not seeing anything. Okay, as I mentioned, next week we do not have a work session. The next regular meeting of Mayor and Council will be on Monday, August 20th. We do have an executive session immediately following this. Hope to see everyone at National Night Out tomorrow. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.